What are we discussing on today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast? No spring training talk today, as we got a big trade in the NL West. We got a crossover with Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres to break it down. Cease coming to the division. Do the Padres leapfrog the Dbacks? Are they now contenders in the National League? We'll talk about that and so much more on today's Locked On Diamondbacks crossover.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We got a big trade in the NL West as Dylan Cease is now coming to the San Diego Padres to muck it up in the division. So, of course, we got to bring on the expert of the Padres, which is Locked On Padres host Javier Reyes. How you doing today, sir?
Doing all right, man. I'm doing all right. Feeling pretty good. A lot of people, they said we couldn't do it. They said this was a quiet off season for the Padres. And, everyone, all these questions. Oh, and look what the Dodgers did. And, oh, look what the Giants are doing. And, oh, Preller's gotten soft. And, oh, the Padres are broke. They don't have a farm system. They can't do anything. It's this or that's it. And, and what happened? What happened to Billard? What happened? What happened? Just tell the good people. Go ahead.
Well, that's where I want to start, Javi. Like, how did this happen? How did they pull it off? Because it wasn't that long ago, we were seeing the reports saying Padres can't even meet the payroll. They're taking out loans. They're trading Juan Soto in the offseason. Like, I could understand why people were saying that about the Padres. I understood why there were naysayers going to the offseason because all the breadcrumbs showed us that, you know what? Maybe this wasn't going to be the Padres' year. Maybe they were going to actually potentially blow it up depending on how they looked by the time we got to the deadline. But nope, in normal Padres Preller fashion, they're going all in this offseason, and they gave up some prospects for Dylan Cease. How were they able to do this, Javi?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's start there. In all seriousness, let's start there with what they gave up. The trade, it seems by all accounts, is Jairo Uriarte, Drew Thorpe, Samuel Zavala, and Steven Wilson in exchange for Dylan Cease. Look, the first thing I want to say is it's actually kind of wild, the timing of this, because the Dylan Cease trade talks have been happening since, the last year's trade deadline. Mm-hmm. But it's really weird that they started to reignite after the Garrett Cole news out of New York. And then so it was 10 times more surprising. It's like, oh, instead the team that's going to make the move is the Padres. And we should have maybe known that AJ Preller, the warlock, paladin, druid, mage, whatever other classes there are, Dungeons and Dragons, that he wasn't going to stay quiet for too long, right? And I'm going to take these off for a little bit.
I kind of like the vibe. I mean, I thought they looked cool. Yeah.
All right, you know what? I'm going to stick with it then. Okay, all right, man. I'm going to stick with it. But I think that what happened was, an amalgamation of things. I think that with the Padres, this is a team that is still in a win now mode, which is something that I've been, not to toot my own horn, have been saying for a while now, which is that I didn't think that the money stuff was that crazy. I was like the one voice who was like, I think everyone just likes to clown on the Padres. I get it. It's fun. And in fairness, they're not the only team. Like, people clown on the Mets, they clown on the Yankees, a team that's spent big, made a lot of moves, and then flopped. I mean, there's no other way to go about it, right? But I felt that the loan stuff was more product of like, you're just losing Soto. That's my personal reaction, where I was like, and I've been saying it like rich people don't go broke the same. I've been saying that all offseason. I wasn't buying it for a bunch of different reasons. First of all, there's incentive for them to reset their luxury tax. So that's why maybe they didn't want to, spend necessarily. Also, they were in on Jung Ho Lee reportedly, and he went for a lot of money. So they're still aggressive and they wanted moves. I think they just wanted to reset their luxury tax threshold. They clearly were in. They were saying, we'll go after Jung Ho Lee and that's it. You know why? Because I think they know as much as I do that it was a pretty weak free agent class compared to what you might get next year. So everyone's talking about Blake Snell. I think there are 4 pitchers minimum that are better than Blake Snell that are going to be free agents next year. So I think that if there was any year for them to cut back a bit, it was this year. And instead, they do that. They make some minor moves, Yuki Matsui. They get Michael King and Drew Thorpe and Randy Vasquez, or no longer Drew Thorpe though. That they get all those guys, and you're saying, okay, they're just going to build around their young core, and then they make this move literally right before they hop on the plane to Seoul for their series and career, right? So just an amazing move. And again, I think that this is a team that next year they could be right back. They kind of can't be cheap Millard because they have the Tatis, Machado, Musgrove, Darvish, Cronenworth contracts. So they literally couldn't be cheap if they tried in a lot of ways. It would be kind of awkward. So if anything, ownership's like, the 200 million line. And by the way, you can win with that. You know what I mean? So I think that there was a little bit of a freak out just because they weren't going over as much as they used to. But I think for a team that's been inconsistent since AJ Preller took over, not winning more than 89 games since he took over, this has been a core that's been a little bit up and down. So instead of spending on a weak free agent class because we're desperate to redeem ourselves from last year, let's instead build around the edges. Let's, see what we got from some of our young guys. We've seen some of them in spring training. Jackson Merrill has been balling out. Maybe he'll be our Corbin Carroll light this year or something like that. You know what I mean? Yeah. All these type of guys, and Graham Pauley, and then you Salas, like they've got some real good farm talent. And that's one thing AJ Preller deserves credit for. He also deserves credit for being one of the most up and down GMs in terms of favorability ratings I've ever seen in my life. Millard, when I first took over, they were down. Then they had a good year, and then they traded for Stella Darvish, then they were up. Then they had the collapse, down. And they didn't do anything, then they were up after they traded for Soto. Then this past year, it was down. I personally was one of those people who thought that they need to move on, that he should have been fired because of not the moves he made, but some clubhouse, how he runs an organization, I think, being too much of a micromanager. And then he does this, and you're like, I mean, at the very minimum, AJ Preller is not boring. And there are a lot of boring teams in this league and a lot of boring GMs in this league, ownership, all that. The guy keeps going for it. And I mean, I imagine we're going to talk about the package they gave up as well. But I mean, they got Dylan Cease in the trade, but you know what else they got? Adrenaline, my friend. They also received adrenaline in return because I jumped out of my bed like a madman possessed. It's a nutty trade, but starting rotation of Darvish, Musgrove, King, who they still got. We can't forget about Michael King. He's got some upside. And Dylan Cease. I mean, that plays. Yeah.
That's kind of my next question. Like, in a vacuum, how much do you actually like the move when considering, Blake Snell still out there in free agency? You got that hole in your rotation. Now you supplement that with Dylan Cease, but you did have to give up some prospects to get him, knowing you've been, unloading the farm system a little bit. So how much are you leveraging there? So in a vacuum, how much do you actually like acquiring Dylan Cease?
I like it. I think that I'll talk about the prospects in a second, but I'll just start with what I said before, which is this is still a team kind of in a win now phase. Aside from Tatis, you've got some guys on the wrong side of 30. Darvish, Cronenworth will get older soon. I think I forgot how old Jake Cronenworth actually is right now, but you've got Machado, you've got Bogarts, you've got Darvish, you've got Musgrove. And Tatis, while he's not old, his contract is going to start spiking soon. Totally deserved, obviously, but it's, it was a more backloaded contract. So they're still in a win now mode, and you get a pitcher who's arbitration eligible. You have him under control for 2 years, this year, next year. He's making about $8 million this year. We'll see what happens if that goes a little bit up or down. Hopefully not, depending on the season he has. But you have to consider that and say, wrong guys on the other side of 30. They're getting older. Contracts are going to get more beefy. They're still in a win now mode. The reason why I was saying they should keep their farm system isn't because I think they need to rebuild. No. But more so just have some extra depth, some reinforcements of roster flexibility. And I think they still keep that in this trade. They did not give up their biggest prospects, which has been one of the things the Padres have been very good with over these years. All these trades they've made, Millard, from Clevenger to Trevor Rosenthal to Josh Hader to Juan Soto. Or not Juan Soto. That's the only trade where they gave up like their top level guys.
CJ Abrams and everything.
Yeah, like CJ Abrams and James Wood, who people love. Yeah. Aside from that one trade, they've managed to always keep their golden eggs, which I think Preller deserves a lot of credit for. Even if those golden eggs then ends up getting traded later. Bottom line is he's been pretty good at wheeling and dealing in that regard. They didn't give up Robbie Snelling, a pitcher who everyone likes, one of their top pitching prospects, if not the pitching prospect. Some people debate that. he could be ready this year. And then you have Dylan Lesko, who's a little bit of a project, but you're going to need someone like him to be ready in 2 years when the aforementioned money starts kicking in with some of those other players, and you might not have as much to spend. And Dylan Lesko, I think, has the highest upside of a lot of prospects in baseball, personally, in terms of pitchers. He just needs time. He's not going to be ready yet. And then, of course, you kept Jackson Merrill, who might make the opening day roster. And also, as you mentioned before, Ethan Salas, the ultimate lottery ticket that could be Adley Rutschman type of prospect in 2 years, or just be a really good catching prospect. Either way, he's super exciting, and they managed to keep them all.
So it looks like we're still riding the AJ Preller roller coaster, and we're on that high right now, coming off this Dylan Cease trade. So we're feeling good about Preller. We're feeling good about the Padres right now. But was the move enough to leapfrog the Dbacks in the NL West? That's what we'll talk about in segment number 2. But of course, if you want to bet on the Padres to potentially win the NL West in 2024, the best place to do that is, of course, FanDuel Sportsbook, because FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, if you go on there and bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets back guaranteed. Could go on there, bet on baseball, basketball, football, really any sport. Now that baseball season is back in full swing, I love to do the same game parlay. Give me that Dbacks money line, especially for playing the San Diego Padres, of course. Give me Corbin Carroll over on total bases, and give me a Ketel Marte RBI. That 3-leg parlay pays out at plus 300. I'm a sucker to put some money down. And if you want to put some money down, but come home with some money back in your bank account, please go to FanDuel Sportsbook. Use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get $200 if you put $5 down and win. So FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go play on America's #1 sportsbook. And also, Fire TV is your destination for sports, from live games to highlights to in-depth analysis. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels let you dive into all the game's analysis, highlights, and more to keep up to the date on all of the latest in the world of sports. March Madness, NBA, MLB, and lots more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedon Fire TV. All right. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks crossover with Locked On Padres host Javier Reyes, discussing that blockbuster trade that brought Dylan Cease to the NL West. But I want to know, Javi, if you think the move was big enough to actually leapfrog the Padres over the Dbacks, of course, the reigning National League champions in that NL West division. Do you think this move was enough to close the gap between the two teams, which probably wasn't that far to begin with from last year?
Yeah, and look, and we've got our big crossover coming up soon that everybody should see with all the NL West hosts here and Locked On. But
Rematch Chapman signing too with some of my takes in that one, but that's okay.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, like now all of a sudden does it? I mean, maybe we should have waited. If the Padres are in there, you got to just wait, I guess.
Yeah, we should do it again. Honestly, there's some big things that's happened since that crossover.
Yeah, just run it back. Keep being a smug son of a gun and looking at me like he has no fear. Yeah, okay. Anyway, to piggyback off what I was saying with the prospects that they kept, I think that that's a big key of this for why I think it's helpful, because they still have some reinforcements that could, like, the roster isn't set. You know what I mean? Like, they might add an outfielder via free agency, like a Tommy Pham, which would be nice, maybe to help out in left field if some of the young guys don't do well immediately. And like I said, with some of the prospects they still have, Merrill and Snelling could be big contributors this year. So that's a big deal. Really quickly, Millard, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk really quickly about what they gave up. Iriarte, my impression is really like the kid, really fiery stuff, velo uptick. I'm okay with giving up, obviously, for a big deal like this. You have to give up something, but I'm excited for him. I think there's a chance he's like an amazing reliever in a few years. So high upside type of guy that I'm interested in, but not one of the Padres big guys. And then you have Zavala. Me personally, people I trust think he's a bit overrated and think that he's one of those peripherals only guys. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't matter, but haven't seen it in the data yet to back it up. So I don't mind that. Then Drew Thorpe, that one is unfortunate for sure. Drew Thorpe is a guy that I also think could have helped out the team this year, but he tracks as of right now as a back end fifth starter potentially.
Did you get him in the Juan Soto deal?
He is. And I was about to say, if you viewed it one way, AJ Preller traded Juan Soto for Randy Vasquez, Michael King, and Dylan Cease.
Okay.
And Kyle Higashioka, the backup catcher. If you view it that way, you know what I mean? Like if you combine them together because they used Thorpe to get him, it's a pretty good move considering that they had to get off of Juan Soto, if I do say so myself. So is Preller back? Maybe. And then the last person that they gave up, Steven Wilson, really excited about him. He's been working on some stuff in the offseason. There was a great piece, I believe, by Kevin Acey of San Diego Union Tribune that I recommend everyone check out about how he's developed and gotten better. Could be a really nice, interesting reliever, but the Padres have a lot of relievers, so I think they could be okay. In terms of your actual question, though, I think that the NL West is officially like the most contested division in baseball.
Bigger than AL East?
No. I think the AL East is good, but I'm not as high on a team like Toronto. I'm not as high on Toronto. I think the Red Sox are going to be the best last place team in the league, but even still, they're not there. Yankees, the mojo's been slipping because guess who just got hurt? Garrett Cole, the best starting pitcher in baseball. And guess what else? They gave up their assurance to who? The Padres. Guys like King, Brito, and Vasquez and Thorpe could be huge to help them out right now, assuming they don't make a move. But it's definitely between those two divisions. I think it's going to be super competitive. I think that the Dbacks and the Giants still deserve, especially the Dbacks, still deserve so much more leeway, I think, because that is a team that showed that they were ready faster than people thought. And think about that. That means that they're only going to get better with some of those young guys. And then they plugged in some of those holes. They got Eduardo Rodriguez. They got Eugenio Suarez. It's going to be a really good team. However, on pitching, I think that it's one of those things where I want a little bit more from Brandon Pfaadt, Merrill Kelly. Just a little bit more. I think that they are absolutely there. But I think we've seen the upside of more guys that are on the Padres versus more guys on the Dbacks, if that makes sense. So like we know what Zach Allen can do. We know what Eduardo Rodriguez can do to an extent, Kelly, but Darvish at the top of his game, that's an all-star. Musgrove is a borderline all-star. Cease is a borderline Cy Young. And then Michael King is very good too. So I think it's a little bit close in that regards, but like if anyone asked me who would I bet on to win this division aside from the Dodgers, I would say don't. I just think it's that close. I could see 3 teams from this division making the playoffs. I really like the additions that the Giants made. But I don't know. I need you to take over for a second, but it's really close because the Padres, you also have to keep in account how unlucky they got with runners in scoring position last year. That tends not to translate year to year. I know they lost Soto, but can you make up for losing Soto with Tatis returning to form, Machado, Bogarts, maybe Jackson Merrill helps out? So that's my line of thinking.
I felt like I was hit with a taser just now when I heard you needed more from Merrill Kelly. I was like, what more?
I know that was mean. I take that one back. Merrill Kelly's good.
I agree with. Yeah, I was like,
Merrill Kelly.
I'm like, Kelly's like an all-star. He just doesn't have like none of the accolades, but he's an all-star in my book. But yeah, honestly, for both of the teams, I think the rotation is what I look at because for the Padres, I mean, they're top heavy as, most teams in baseball, as we always talk about, that big 3 in the middle of the lineup with Bogarts, Machado, Tatis, of course. We know who is in that rotation, but the rotation is going to be, I think, the biggest X factor for me. I'm not worried about the Cease. I'm not worried about the Musgrove. It really is just Darvish he's, I think, the swing piece for the Padres this season because he is old. Like the man's like 37, 38 years old. He hasn't looked the same the last couple of years. He seems to be a little bit in the decline. So what level is Yu Darvish at? Like we know, like you said, when he is on his game at his peak, he is a Cy Young candidate, but I don't know if those days are past him. Those days, he was a dude who was a workhorse in his prime. He has dealt with a couple injuries throughout his career. So I don't know where exactly he is at this point of his career. So I think he's going to be the biggest X factor. Like you said, the Dodgers are always going to be the team you bet on in the NOS. But just comparing the D-backs and Padres together, like I think they're definitely kind of on their own tier. I think I would have the Giants right behind them. I still think the Giants are not a bad team. I actually, if like we talked about on that, division roundtable crossover, I have some maybe slander against the Giants, but that was, pre Matt Chapman, and who knows, the Giants, they've been rumored to maybe be interested in a Blake Snell. Like the Giants could be inspired by this move that they just saw the Padres make. I think the Giants are a team that still wants it to make it to the postseason, still wants to be good and win games this year. So I think a move like this can only ignite a fire under a team like the Giants. And honestly, as we get closer to the season, the NOS might get even tougher, and we might not be done seeing the teams in this division make moves, finish making moves yet this offseason.
Exactly. I mean, if the Padres just went out and got Cease, like, guys, Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell are still out there. Now, I don't think Jordan Montgomery I think he's one of those guys you're really happy about if you're a team that's already a little bit set up. Blake Snell's like a potential ace type of pitcher, and that's no shots to Jordan Montgomery. But yeah, like I could totally see, what if the Giants add him? I don't know what the word is on the D-backs right now, but what if the Giants add him? Like they've been linked to him a little bit. They need some pitching. They need some backup. So does that change some things? You reunite with Bob Melvin and all that stuff. And I also agree with you on Darvish. That could be a swing one. Very up and down. He's still a good pitcher even when he's hurt and ailing a little bit. Like throws innings, he'll be okay. But he goes from being like that number 1 or 2 to like a 4 or 5 if he's hurt. And that's been the thing. 2021, his first season. Amazing first half, all-star. Falls apart second half with some injury issues. Then the next year, Padres make the NLCS, and he's a big reason for that. Consistent. Doesn't walk any batters, great control. And then this past year, injuries, and then he has a bad year. So he's really up and down. You know what I mean? Like, but if they have him, and what I like is that the Cease move makes it that I don't have to be as optimistic and hoping that Yu Darvish returns to what he was 2 years ago, or when he's healthy, basically. Like you don't have to count on that quite as much, which is great. But it is a great point. Although don't sleep on Michael King.
Yeah, Michael King's good. Michael King's good. He had a good season with the Yankees. That number 3 starter for both our teams, because we both trust our front lines, the Gallons, the Kellys, the Musgroves, the Ceases. We trust that. The number 4, number 5 for both our teams. Question marks. Like you said, Michael King's good. Brandon Pfaadt, we think he should be good. He was good in the postseason. Number 5 starter for both of us. Question mark as we leave spring training. But we both know our number 3 starter can be an all-star plus pitcher if they're right. But like an Erod, he has been hurt throughout his career. He's had up and down seasons. So for both of our teams, I think that number 3 starter.
I think they're like the exact same on paper. You've got your MVP candidate in Carroll. So do the Padres and Tatis. We just talked about pitching. We may have you beat at, say, third base, theoretically, of course, with Manny Machado.
I would say for sure, yeah.
But shortstop, we might have you
got
beat
an all-star there.
We got an all-star there. But also with him, maybe Jordan Lawler gets called up a little bit later. Maybe he becomes interesting. And then, okay, we're beating you in that. But then first base, you got Christian Walker, we got Jay Cronenworth. So we beat you at these positions and maybe right field. Catcher, you have a little bit of an advantage right now, even though the Campizano hive. Don't sleep on Luis Campizano. Right. But, Gabriel Marino might just be the second. I wouldn't be shocked if Gabriel Marino is like the number 2 catcher to Adley Rutschman this year. You know what I mean? Like, it would not surprise me if it's like, here are the 2 catchers, this guy and then this guy. At the end of the year, I could totally see that. So I think it's going to be a blast, man. Do we have to make a wager? I think we might have to.
God, I'm going to have a wager with every NOS division host by the time the season starts. We're gonna have to. We'll talk about it. We'll go offline and talk about a wager, because I'm definitely down to always bet on which team is gonna finish better in the end of season standing. So we could talk about that offline after this. I do want to talk about, is Dylan Cease the best starter in the NOS? I got a little game of Cease or the other guy that we're going to play in segment number 3. But before we get into that, I first want to tell our listeners about this new sponsor that we have here at Locked On called Prize Picks, because football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up, whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court. There's no shortage of high stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. So if you want to play, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Back here on the Locked On Diamondbacks crossover with the Locked On Padres host Javier Reyes. I want to play a little game with you, Javi, but before we get into that, I first want to poke the bear a little bit and ask you, because we've talked about on this podcast before, we've talked about Vlad Guerrero Jr. Is he overrated? I actually want to ask, looking at the numbers for Dylan Cease, is he the Vlad Guerrero Jr. of pitchers? Because 2022 was a phenomenal year. Finished second in Cy Young voting. Javi, I know if you look at the advanced stats, I'm sure they tell you he's a elite #1 starter, but I can't help as a casual, just look at the peripherals. I see the year, right? A lot of times it's a lot closer to north of 4 than below 4, Javi. So do we feel like this guy may just be a Vanilla Ice, one-hit wonder? That's too far. That was slander.
He said that even for you, and you're the hot take machine. You know what I mean?
I was like, that was crazy.
Lord had to pull back on that.
I revolted as I said it. I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. Hey, I was mean to Merrill Kelly for a second, and I thought I had to apologize too. Merrill Kelly's had 2 good seasons now. He's good. Since 2021, Dylan Cease has the 6th highest average fastball velocity among starting pitchers, for one thing. And I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but the pitchers who have generated more whiffs on pitches, there's only 2. And I believe one of them is Corbin Burns, who's now with Baltimore. I don't remember who the other one is. Someone might have to look that up for me. I imagine I got that stat from Sarah Langs or something like that. I don't know where I saw it, but just hear me out. When it comes to strikeout stuff, this guy's basically a Blake Snell. The only difference is that he's had more consistency in availability and pitching innings, but they're very similar. Control can sometimes be an issue. Obviously, you talked about that. This past year, 10.1% walk rate. That's, not great in a lot of ways, but it's no joke talking about that. And I don't think that that Cy Young season was some sort of fluke. You know what I mean? I just don't think that's what happened. And just for context about that walk rate, let me just pull it up really quickly. Like Blake Snell's was 13.3% last year. So they really are very similar. High strikeout pitchers with Cy Young upside, but some control issues. I don't think that any of the crazy data changed. And I take at least a little bit into account that Petco, I think, is going to be a much better park for him. He's going to have an infinitely better, not just team that actually has aspirations of winning baseball games, but a team with a great defense behind it. Tatis with the platinum glove, Manny Machado at third, Ha-Sung Kim, Xander Bogaerts he was actually he was okay at shortstop last year, might be even better at second base. And Jake Cronenworth, while there are questions about the bat, he's a decent first baseman. He's a decent fielding player. And that's just a few, right? And then we'll have to see how the rest of the team transpires. But I think he's going to have a much better defense behind him. And I don't think the swing and miss stuff has changed. He's not too old at age 28.
No.
Still whiff percentage, 84th percentile, strikeout percentage, 77th percentile. I don't think too much change. I think it was just an off year. I think it was a bad team, and that must feel weird to pitch on. And again, like I said, he's literally been finished second in Cy Young voting. And he had an awesome year the year before that, by the way. I don't like using WAR for pitchers because I think it takes weird. I don't like using WAR for pitchers because then it's like Dylan Cease had almost more than Blake Snell last year. It's like, well, I don't like using expected stats, right? And when you're doing WAR, and I think that they weigh too much for pitchers. So to me, I'm like, well, what did he do? Bottom line, for WAR, Dylan Cease did have a 4.5 ERA last year, but he's had 3 straight seasons of being electric. So I think if everything fits there, this guy's a Cy Young and the best pitcher in the rotation or in the division. But but that's if everything goes right. And I still think there are issues with control. There's definitely some issues there. He could get a little bit wild. And who knows? You know, he's going to be changing leagues. That's something to take into account, right? Like you're going to be facing different teams. You're going to be on the West Coast. It's worth bringing up. And this isn't like what it used to be where you could pencil in the ERA going down because they didn't have the universal DH once upon a time in the National League because baseball's stupid. Glad that they figured out that was stupid though. I just think that the data is still there. The slider is still electric. Hitters still can barely hit it. 216 average, not good, right? Like he's still just so electric that I think he'll be okay. He'll be better than the ERA says. However, in terms of best in the division, I can't confidently say that. Now, depth is a big part of this. We're not talking about rotation, but I think Gallen, I mean, that guy's a Cy Young contender literally last year. You know what I'm saying? Like if we want to go by Cy Young status, well, Zach Allen was a contender last year. I believe he finished third, if I'm not mistaken, second or third, right? You have him. I think Yamamoto is going to be a freak. So that's one right there. I think Walker Buehler, if he's healthy, which I don't know when he'll get fully healthy. If he's fully healthy, I think he's better than Dylan Cease. Then you've got Logan Webb, who, he doesn't strike out enough people. It doesn't matter. He strikes out enough, and every other batter makes horrible contact off him. He has one of the highest ground ball rates in the league, which is very, very good, right? Like if people make contact with this guy, the ball's not going anywhere. So I think Webb, Yamamoto, and Gallen comfortably are ahead of him. But if it's that 2020 season, I think Glasnow I need to see a little bit more like innings. You know what I mean? I think Glasnow's got the talent to be like better than all the people I said, but I think if we're going to go by most recency, I think Dylan Cease deserves a little bit more because he's been more better recently while Glasnow's just coming back. And I think he's going to be great, but it's close. So I think that basically every team in the division outside Colorado has a gambit or a case to make for the best pitcher in the division.
Yeah, and honestly, everyone in the division has at least 2 to 3 guys that they feel pretty good about because even the Giants second half should be getting Robbie Ray back that they were like in their rotation as well. So very competitive NL West. Padres, once again, land a big fish in Dylan Cease, which is just shocking because we thought maybe their offseason was over. And then all of a sudden, right before the regular season, because their regular season started a week earlier before everyone else, they're about to head off to Korea. So right before that little series, they pull off this monster Dylan Cease blockbuster of a move. And now they're in position to potentially set themselves up for a deep postseason run with an improved rotation. That is Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres. Where can the esteemed listeners find you online, Javi?
I mean, you can find me at Javapeno joking around, tweeting more about baseball lately, JAVIIPENO, or at LO_Padres if you want only Padres tweets, and then Locked On Padres on YouTube. Go follow me also with my writing at my main account. You'll see me post about that. Just baseball, where I write about not just the Padres, but all of baseball stuff in general. And I've got a new thing in the works over there. So stay tuned for that. Not going to announce that just yet. Going to wait a little bit longer because I like teasing people. You know what I mean? And it's going to be fun. And in terms of tomorrow's episode, going to be talking about what I think the Padres lineup should look like. It was recorded before the Dylan Cease trade, but I don't think it changed too much. So I'm going to still throw it out there. But it's crazy. Millard, I literally haven't recorded episodes ahead in like more than a year. And the one time I do it, it was this week. And then they made the Dylan Cease trade. Yeah, I'm not kidding. I have a screenshot of the episodes on my laptop. It's crazy.
Well, now you just bank it for another day. Look at you. You're done for the week. You're done for the week. So take the day off, go enjoy the rest of the night, and go bask in your Dylan Cease blockbuster. At Career Times 24 for my personal account. Look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter, Instagram. Search up Locked On Diamondbacks wherever you stream podcasts. And please hit subscribe on YouTube. Locked On Diamondbacks, Locked On Padres. Javi, we'll talk about a wager offline until we probably meet in the regular season. We might do another crossover before then. You never know. As always, doses.